In 1981, an English jazz rock band embraced the machine age with a new sound that was half electronic library music and half new romantic futurism. I am talking about Landscape. And from their 1981 release, From the Tea Rooms of Mars to the Hell Holes of Uranus, the instrumental Computer Person. Here are the different layers that are going on here. We've got that main frontal sound, really kind of just like slicing through with the main melody, and then we've also got this like tinkly like sound kind of lower in the mix. Hear that like tinkly, little faster. Oh wow! Now we're echoing. Almost sounds like they're using like an echoplex or something. It has a similar like great bridge with that A minor thrown in and that more kind of mid-range sound and the sustained notes in it. How would you describe that sound? It's kind of like icy. It's kind of icy. It's somewhat like organ-like, only on like an early '80s type keyboard, but recalling like a sound from like earlier, like 20 years earlier or something. Doesn't it have like just like a faint bit of like Farfisa in it, like for like some early '80s, like I don't know, like a Yamaha or something, like with oh me and let's see what all are they playing. I believe Richard Burgess is probably responsible for most of the frontal sounds. The drummer turned elect primarily electronic player on this album. He does program the electronic drums. I mean, well, he always remained a drum guy. I mean, Richard James Burgess was like co-inventor of the Simmons drum, the electronic drum kit. Yeah, on this album he plays, he's credited with electronic drums, electronic percussion, synthesizer, and organic drums. And Christopher Heaton, keyboards, grand piano, electric piano, Fender Rhodes. And, oh, John Walter is also synthesizer. Yeah, a lot of, and Andy Pask bass and synthesizer bass. So it seems like everyone is pitching into the electronic element in the sound in some capacity. Even Peter Toms, the trombone guy, plays an electronic trombone in some parts of the album. I love how this theme has like kind of like developed and sort of how different elements have been added to it over time, and that persistent like programmed electronic drum pattern has just that just doesn't let up, and yet it's vocoderized vocal bits, and yeah, I like how the synth bass interacts with that electronic drum. Echoing. No, no, no. No. I like I like the chords. What I like about this is that full chord tonalities are being formed by the various like electronic inputs. It's like in music like of this sort, oftentimes you'll just hear like single notes. You won't hear so much like major minor tonalities emerge. And I although I get if I was to compare this track to anyone, I guess it would be YMO more than any of their English brethren, like on the futurist, new romantic proto synth pop scene. Yeah, that bass bit. I love how it has sort of yeah. The rhythmic component is strong. Yeah, and that really just slicing keyboards like main theme is just a real earworm, and the way they developed it, kind of like library esque, YMO esque, quirky, unique, very much a novelty on the neuro scene circa 1981 in England. And they were right in the thick of it. And Richard James Burgess, of course, being the producer of Spandau Ballet and the man credited for coining the term new romantic. And yeah, it was the Simmons drum. The hexagonal shaped Simmons SDSV. Yeah, he conceptualized and co-designed the first standalone electronic drum set. Yeah. He is believed to be the first to record digital samples on a commercial recording with his programming of a Fairlight CMI on Kate Bush's Never Forever album and Visage's single Fade to Grey. Yeah, which both came out the prior year to this album. Yeah, so he was just all over the place in the early 1980s, and. Yeah, actually originally from New Zealand, but he had been living in the United Kingdom since childhood, which is probably why Split Enz didn't know about him as a New Zealander when they were when they were kind of based in the UK for like the better part of a year in 1976, fired their New Zealand drummer and wanted to replace him with another New Zealander, and so they went to the musicians' union, I guess, or wherever you would find other Kiwi musicians in abroad, and there was only one Kiwi drummer in England that they found out about, I guess, through this agency, and it wasn't him; it was someone else who turned them down, and they ended up hiring an Englishman. Meanwhile, although I don't know if approaching Richard James Burgess would have worked for them, even though his image would have fit in, because even in 1976 he had short hair and wore colorful clothing, as evidenced on the cover of the first Easy Street album. Yeah, that's the band that he was busy with, Easy Street. He put out 2 albums with them. I did a video on one of their songs a couple of months ago. Yeah, and. Yeah, add to the recently assembled 1977 playlist of all the songs I've covered from 1977 so far, which will just keep on growing. Let's hear another song from this album, Alpine Tragedy / Sisters. I love the somnambulistic vibe of this so far. Kind of, I'm not going to go so far as to say lucid, but it's got this kind of like lurching, like slow, kind of sedative. Oh, that sound that's like diamonds on like slow diamonds on slow waves or sparkling. That sound I it's similar to the sound on that Babylon album. It's a certain setting on a certain keyboard, and if you know the exact make and model, please leave a comment. Yeah. Um, Here it's just like sparkle and spiral. It's like kind of like a diamond glistening spiral type sound. You knew that we were going into very different territory the moment those bells started and some sounds just started colliding, like from another, as if they were from like another recording altogether, kind of like waking things up that from that that passage that we were in, and yeah, we've entered, I guess, Alpine Tragedy, kind of a bleak title for the what we were just kind of in anyway. This, I guess, must be Sisters. I'm reminded of two things offhand. The main like synth theme that we were just hearing, the really buoyant. It kind of it has sort of like a game show sound to it. It sounds like it could have been like used for more of like an upbeat variety show from around this time period. Like say, oh maybe it's like say sometime in the like the 1979 to 1982 time frame. Um, I'm hearing kind of like a mixture of like 70s and very like Dawn of the 80s sounds in this. Um, I'm also reminded somewhat of the band After the Fire, like on say like their second album, maybe like Laser Love, like some of the upbeat tracks on that. They use those really kind of almost kind of like crude, like late period like analog sounds or early digital. And I'm also as we go into this bridge part right here with the bells, I'm reminded of the mid 70s band Seventh Wave. Now, granted, it's been a while since I've listened to those two albums, but Seventh Wave were this duo that emerged from the ashes of the late 60s psychedelic art rock band Second Hand. Um, Secondhand like had like a real like kind of like experimental psych sound that also kind of tended to get theatrical and at times uh, and I don't know, kind of like somewhere between like the Move and Arthur Brown's Kingdom Come, kind of, and Seventh Wave though were just sui generis. They've been inaccurately described, at least on the old GERP, they were inaccurately described as a precursor to the early 80s synth pop sound. Like someone on the old Gibraltar Encyclopedia of Classic Rock said, oh, synth duo totally ahead of their time for the mid 70s, sounds kind of like a precursor to what OMD and would be doing in the early 19 or Depeche Mode would be doing like 8 years later. And I'm thinking, no, they instead sounded kind of like a mixture of like game show music and I don't more than anything. I was thinking I thought their album sounded like game show music mixed with post psychedelic studio uh, tomfoolery. Uh, my impressions 20 years ago was that they were unfocused. But what does that term really even mean, other than an inability for the listener to pigeonhole them into some preconceived? Okay, I got sidetracked into a talk about seventh wave, and the reason why I really brought that up is because of all the things I've heard from the early 80s. This is the only thing that reminds me of seventh wave. In fact, perhaps this is the only thing anywhere from any time that I thought that I've been compelled to compare to seventh wave. And that's how either musically unique or in some ways musically lost I may have found them when I was first listening to their albums 20 years ago. But finally, finally that person, whoever wrote it on GEPR, is somewhat vindicated, even if he didn't choose the right early 80s band to compare Seventh Wave to. Yeah, there were some passages on at least one of the Seventh Wave songs that I believe used like this big drum sound and some bells. Here are the two sounds we got going on now. We've got that really we've got that really like trebly kind of like wheezy sound, and then we've also got that other sound that kind of like is like an approximation of horns. Maybe that's like the electronic trombone. I don't know what an electric. Come to think of it, that main keyboard sound, that kind of juicy, thick keyboard sound, wah, 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 almost sounds like an attempt to approximate horns. Yeah, this has more kind of like the precision of like a horn pop instrumental, like kind of like from the early 70s or something. Okay, it's got that peppy beat that you wouldn't have had 10 years earlier. you hear that? Did you hear that wheezy ringing sound being kind of like strangled toward the end, just going all like haywire? Yeah, that was Alpine Tragedy Sisters from Landscape, from the album From the Two Rooms of Mars to the Hell Holes of Uranus, their second album released in 1981, very different from their first album, simply titled Landscape, which came out in 1979. And it would also be very different from the next album, Manhattan Boogie Woogie, which came out in 1982. That one being more just kind of a standard, kind of just synth pop album. I would have to hear that again. I remember not liking it back in the 90s when I was really getting into this band. But then again, I need to really bone up on the first one, as a matter of fact. I can vouch more for the EPs they put out during their jazz rock phase in the late 70s. Like in 77, 78, they put out back-to-back EPs, which had a few good songs, kind of in, I think kind of like in the late Soft Machine vein, or if I recall correctly, or maybe kind of like Isotope. Kind of, or kind of more on the kind of on the lazier end of jazz rock, kind of yeah, more kind of loungy. Maybe I don't know. Maybe even kind of like Solution or something. I'd have to hear them again. Anyway, yeah. This album, though, Two Rooms of Mars, Hell Holes of Uranus, like no other. It's just like comedy, futurism, and like Jetsonian cafes and transportation devices, just all wrapped up into perfect, concept album for the modernist, futurist, chronospace club goers of 1981. Yeah. For more Rubies and Sapphires from the Landscape album and from their catalog overall, see the directory of albums by English L artists linked in the description below. Like and subscribe and follow me on social media, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the 2.5 songs we just heard. The layers, the instrumentation, the tones, the instruments that were used. If you can pinpoint the exact make or model of certain sounds, where they originated, the effects that may have been employed to get certain sounds, yeah, leave a comment on that. Or if you had anything to say about when I kind of went sort of on that rant about some related topics, feel free to leave some input on those topics as well. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled tri-maximalist, signing off.